Hey guys, it's Dr. Hayes, and this is the screencast for how to do the works cited. Formatting for MLA is what this one's about, and I'll show you a little bit of APA as well. But this video is focusing mainly on MLA, MLA format for how to set up your works cited. So in the last screencast, I showed you basically how to just set up the document at the top with all the information with MLA, but this one is actually about how to format the works cited list. So I'm going to show you in Word in a blank document that I've got pulled up how to format it, and then I'm going to show you how to use our textbook. I've got the manual here, and I'm going to show you how to use it to find the formatting that you need for any particular source that you might encounter and use in your papers. So, and then I'll show you how to find the sources that you need and how to do references online if you need to. We'll look at the online writing lab from Purdue University that I've showed you before about how to set up the title page and everything, but we'll look at it again as far as how to set up references. So I think I'm going to get rid of my camera over here just for now, so we can look at the works cited. Okay, so the way you set it up, it's the last page of your paper, and it is on its own page. So your works cited should start on a brand new page. Don't start it at the end of wherever your text ends in your paper. Start it on a brand new page. And then the heading is just like the title of the whole paper. It's centered. So you center it using the options up here, and then you call it works cited. So notice that that's not underlined. There's no colon after it. It doesn't say citations. It doesn't say references. It doesn't say bibliography. For MLA, this page is called the works cited. So the spacing is up in vertical spacing. It's just like the rest of the paper where it's double spaced, and the whole thing is Times New Roman. So to start putting your entries in, you enter down to the very next line, and don't put a whole bunch of space in between the heading and all of the entries after that. Let's see. So you're actually ready to start putting in your entries. So let me see, I'm just going to make some up. Because normally you could copy and paste these in from a database, or you might have to make them up from scratch. So we're going to say there's a book by John Smith, and book titles are in italics. We'll go over this in a second. How I Met and Fell in Love with Pocahontas? Am I spelling that right? I don't know if I'm spelling it. Yes. No. I bet there's no H right there. Yep. I put an extra H. So that's the name of our book by John Smith. And then you put a period. Don't worry about this formatting right now. I'm just trying to get some entries in here to show you the space. Let's see. Ratcliffe Publishing, isn't that the bad guy? Ratcliffe Company, comma, we're going to put 2008, even though that is not when John Smith. Actually, we need this to be longer, so the spacing. Let's make the title a little bit longer. There we go. I needed it to be 2 lines. True and harrowing to me. There we go. So I needed that one to be 2 lines. Now let's do an article. Let's see. Who can our article be by? I want it to be by somebody else. It's going to be by Susan Jones. Article titles are in quotation marks. Title case. All major words capitalized. That's for the books and the articles. The lifespan of a typical Marsh dwelling college freshman. I'm having fun with this. Ecological study in 3 parts. That's my made-up title for that article. In quotation marks. And then the journal is in italics. Journal of American Education Studies. That's what we'll name our journal. Comma. Volume 24. Comma. I think it's... Oh, now I need to look that up. I think you put parentheses. No, you do this. Right. VO. I left part out. Volume 24, comma. You put number in O 3, comma 2018, comma, and then the page number, PP period 8 through 36 period. Then if we had, it was from a database, that would have to go on here as well. We'll put EBSCO host, that's a popular database. And then the link. That's like if it's a hyperlink. Okay, so I wanted to just get a couple of entries in here just to show you how to do the spacing and everything. Some tips and tricks. So we've got a couple of entries. I've got one for a book, one for an article. So you'll notice that those are not in alphabetical order, and the spacing is not correct because the entries are supposed to have a hanging indent. So I will show you what that is. So let's see. So if you get a bunch of entries pasted into your Works Cited and they're not in alphabetical order because you're just kind of putting them in the order that you found them, you can use this tool up here. Do you notice up here the A to Z with an arrow? So if you select whatever text it is you're wanting to alphabetize, and you select the A to Z, and it will give you the option to sort in ascending order or descending. Ascending means starting with A and going up to Z. That's the one you want. And sort by paragraphs. Paragraph in Word is every time you hit enter, it recognizes that as a paragraph. So with your Works Cited entries, that will apply. Every paragraph, is a new entry. So I'll hit OK, and it will move the one by Jones up, and it will move the one by Smith down, so that they are in alphabetical order by the last name. And so if you had, this would have been easy to switch around by just copying and pasting. But if you had a whole entry or a whole list of 15 or 16 entries and they were all out of alphabetical order, that could be really tedious to copy and paste and put them all in the right order. So that is a shortcut where you can just select them all and click this A to Z button up here and alphabetize them, reorganize them. Something else you need to fix for the Works Cited list, for the Works Cited spacing, is applying a hanging indent. So in Word, you use these rulers here, and you use these little triangle indicators on the ruler. Your rulers might not automatically be showing. So if you're in Word or even Google Docs, I think Google Docs has rulers like this. If you make them show. I'm not really sure where in Google Docs the setting is, but in Word, if you go up to View, and it'll say Ruler, you can click it. You can click Ruler, and it'll show the ruler. If yours aren't showing, you might need to go to View and click Show the Ruler. In Google Docs, it's probably a similar setting. So the way that you set a hanging indent. So a hanging indent is the opposite of a paragraph indent. A paragraph indent is where the first line of every paragraph is indented ½ an inch. It's indented, you hit tab, or Word now just automatically does it. A hanging indent is the opposite, where the first line is even with the margin, and then any other lines in that paragraph before you hit enter again. Any other lines after the first one, they're the ones that are indented over 1/2 inch. It's the opposite of a paragraph indent. So the way you do that is these triangles up here. So the top triangle, I'll see if it'll show with the cursor. The top triangle controls the first line of a paragraph. The bottom triangle, see it even says hanging indent. The bottom triangle controls all of the other lines in the paragraph. And then the little square rectangle underneath controls the whole paragraph together. So if you want to apply a hanging indent, you select the text that you want to do that to, and then you select the bottom triangle, click and drag over to the 1/2 inch, and notice it just drags over all of the subsequent lines after the first line. So if I were to hit enter and start typing again, I'm just going to type some nonsense so you can kind of see you might can hear my clicking. You can see the spacing. See, look how it automatically did it until I hit enter again, and then it'll move me over to the left margin. So if you apply the hanging indent, it will go ahead and automatically do that going forward if you need to add some text afterwards. So the hanging indent might seem like a nitpicky thing. Oh, why is the spacing such a big deal? Well, it has a logical reason. Okay, so if you remember back to the first lecture when I explained what MLA was, and I explained the reasons why we have to have a system like that and how there's a logic behind it, how MLA has 2 parts, where there's a works cited at the end that has all of the information for the sources, and then there is citations within the text, and those help you tag the information in the paper to label the information based on which source it came from in the works cited. Well, the hanging indent creates an effect where, as you can see, the last name of every entry, and if these were not gibberish, they would be the same way, but the last name of each entry sticks out. It sticks out more prominently than the rest. So it helps distinguish the start of each entry. We do the hanging indent in MLA APA is the same way, by the way. APA uses the hanging indent also. But we use the hanging indent instead of, say, bullets, like a bullet list, or numbering. The sources in a works cited MLA format or APA format are not numbered. They don't use bullets. They don't use dashes or anything like that. They're in alphabetical order by the last name, and then you have a hanging indent so that the last name sticks out into the margin. And so if someone is inside the text and they're looking at a quotation, and say, oh, this is from Jones 2018, and it's on page 24. So they can flip to the works cited, scan down the list, look for Jones because it'll be sticking out. They'll look for Jones and and they can see the whole information for that whole article. And then they can find it, and they can go right to that page, page 24 in that source, and find exactly where it is that the quote is that you used and where you got your information. So that is the idea behind the spacing and the hanging indent on the works cited. As far as the italics, the volume, 24 number. All of that is not something that I'm expecting you to memorize. So I'm going to switch my camera on here for a second, and we can look at the book. Hi! So I wanted to show you the book and show you how to use it to figure out how to do the italics and the commas and the periods and all the different things. Again, that's not something I have. Some of the formatting memorized, but I just now, when I was making up a random made-up entry, I had to double-check the manual, the guide, just to double-check to make sure I was putting everything in the right place. And I do this for a living, so of course nobody is expecting you to memorize the formatting for these entries in MLA. It's just not realistic. Professionals don't have it memorized. We're not expecting you to have it memorized. But you do need to know how to find the formatting for the source that you have and to use the resources that you have to get the formatting that you need to be able to follow the directions and make it in the right format. So if you're being held accountable to have your entries in the correct MLA or APA format or whatever format your teacher requires, and you have a book that shows you how, you have to learn how to use the resource you have to achieve the result that's being required. It doesn't have to be for memorization, but it does, you do have to, do it. You do have to make it correct. And so I want to use this book to kind of show you how. And this is a standard style manual. It's the one that we use at school, but it is not the only one that you might ever own. It's not the only one that you might ever encounter in a class or in another university setting, or even you might get a job somewhere and they might have a style manual. Remember we said how, and I've said in the first lecture, how nobody's in charge of English. Nobody manages it. Well, each institution that you are a part of and work for, they might have their own sort of usage guide. And so what you're trying to learn in this class, what I'm trying to teach you, is how to use a usage guide to get the correct format that you need. So this is the one we're using for our class. And so for MLA, there's a color-coded sections. I don't know if it'll show up in the video. It probably doesn't. But there's color-coded sections. There's ones that have blue pages along the border. There's ones that have, I think APA, blue is MLA. Then there's ones that have green. I lost my page. Here we go. There's ones that have green along the border. Those are APA. And then there's ones that have purple along the border. Those are Chicago style. So they're kind of color-coded. So we're going to use the MLA section. So this is the page where everybody needs to start. Okay, it's kind of hard to see. But it's page 140 and 141 in your manual. And what this is it is an index of all the different kinds of sources that you might need to use. So if you need to make a citation from scratch, say you're not using a database for something, and remember I showed you that if you're using a database, you can just copy and paste the citation using the Cite button in a database. But if you're not using something and you have like that and you have to build the citation from scratch, you can use this book. So these pages 140, 141 in your book, they list all the different kinds of sources that you might encounter. So it's articles from a journal, articles from a magazine, articles from a newspaper. You can cite just an abstract. You can cite all different kinds of books, different editions of a book, a multi-volume book, books by multiple authors, books that are reprints. Then it has a section for websites, so you can cite websites or part of a website. There are like alternative type sources over here, a podcast, film, a video on the web. So if you have a YouTube video, that would be that one, a video from the web. A computer software app, that would be a video game. Computer software, there's multiple different kinds of software, but if you were doing a video game, that would count for that too. A television show, a performance. You can cite a speech or a presentation that you went to. You can cite it as a source, and there's a way to do that in here. An interview, a text message, a social media post. You can cite a Tumblr post or a Reddit post or something like that as a source. And so if anything you really think of, your first task, if you have a source, and when you're working on your annotated bibliographies, this will be your first task, is to determine what kind of source have I got here? What is it? And you look through this index and try to figure out what best fits the source that I've got here. Is it a work on a website? Is it an entire website that I want to cite? Is it a TV program? Is it a video from the web? So you need to determine what kind of source you have. Then you look on this index and find it, and next to each one is a page number. Ooh, that's so bright. Next to each one is a page number. So that page number lets you know where in this book are the instructions for how to format that specific type of source. So we will do a work from a website. That's a common one. So if you're on a website and there's a page on a website, an article on a website or a specific page, you don't want to cite the whole website, just that page. We're going to go, that's on page 161. So I'm going to go to page 161. And so we'll see here, number 39. I'm going backwards. A work from a website. See, and it shows you, I'm trying to fight the light. It shows you exactly how to cite it. It breaks it down into chunks. The author, the title, all of that stuff. Right? So, you just, it's really, there's really not a lot more to it other than, at that point, you just have to determine which part of the source you have matches which part on here. And it has it broken out. The author, last name first, the title, then the title of the website, then the date, and then the URL. The date is the date the page on the website was published. Sometimes you don't have that. It's really hard to find information like this from websites sometimes. Sometimes if you scroll all the way to the bottom, and there's all that little fiddly bit at the bottom with the fine print, you can see the date, like the most recent copyright date, if the page itself doesn't have a date on it. You can also see the title of the website, or like who's responsible for the website. So sometimes you have to scroll down to the bottom. Sometimes if you're citing a whole website, there's a contact us page, and you can go to the contact us page and get information about who's actually responsible for the content on the website, and that's who you can cite. So sometimes it's not as easy as just plugging in the information into a pattern. Sometimes some of these online sources, it's difficult to discern what that information is and to find it. So that's a little bit tricky. But other than understanding how to use the book by looking at the index, figuring out what kind of source you have, going to that source, that source's entry, and then following the instructions. Beyond understanding the logic of how that works, then you just have to practice. Every source you get, everything you end up needing to cite will give you a chance to practice. It's really learning how to do MLA citations is really a source by source basis. Like I can give you sample ones to practice on, which we'll do. I can give you practice ones to sample on, especially in our final exam. That will be part of it. But for your own personal projects, it's hard to say, oh, well, in that case you do this, and in that case you do that. I could sit here all day and talk about exceptions to the rule. Now, if you have a work that does this, that's how you'd cite that. So you really just kind of have to go source by source and use the book, and then ask me if you have questions. Like, hey, I found the entry for this one in the book, but I'm not really sure this little bit what I should put there. Or you can say, I have this source that I want to use for my annotated bib, but I don't know what kind of source it is. I don't know if it's this or this. I don't know which format I'm supposed to be using. So those are the kinds of things you can ask questions about and get help with as you go while you're learning. But that is how you format a works cited. I do want to talk now about the in-text citations. And this is not the last time we will talk about these. I want to talk about them in class. I want to talk about them again multiple times. As we're working on different things, we'll talk about, we'll double check our in-text citations. We'll double check everything. But I want to just kind of go over them now. I'm going to hide my webcam again. Okay, so we're back at our document. So I'm going to scroll down a little bit to a new page. Whew, I went real far. Let's get... Okay, so whenever we get to the lessons in the semester about incorporating quotations from your sources and information from your sources within the text, we will talk more about how to incorporate those in. You'll read chapters in your textbook about that. You'll have practice about sufficient ways to introduce sources into a text. But for now, I just want to talk about the punctuation of the in-text citations, how they work. Because you've seen the second part, or the first part, where you have the list of your sources at the end of the document and the works cited. throughout the document, though, you have, you have in-text citations where you have to tag all your information. So I'm going to say, I'm just going to put that. Quote, quote, quote. Okay, so that's what Joan said. So we'll close the quotation, and then the in-text citation is just the last name and the page number. Period. No comma, no nothing. Now, technically, since I mentioned the author's name in the sentence, it doesn't need to go in the in-text citation. You don't need it in both places. It would just be the page number, and that's it for MLA. Now, if you had a sentence that you'd say, some scholars have noted that blah, 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 and you put a quotation, but you don't actually mention it in the sentence. I'm going to enter this down so it's a new one. Oh, nope, that's not how that goes. There we go. Some scholars have, and you don't actually mention the author in the sentence, you're just quoting one of them as a representative. Then you would put the name in the parentheses. So a lot of students, I have a lot of students every semester who are like, that's it? That's all? Y'all's instinct is to put a whole bunch of extra stuff in the in-text parentheses, the parenthetical citation. You think you need to put the link to the article. You think you need to put the whole title of the article. No, you don't need to do that. People put commas. People put PG period or whatever in front of the page number. None of that. It's just the last name and page number, no other punctuation. And the period for the sentence goes on the outside of the parentheses. And if you mention and introduce the name of the author within the text of the essay, you don't put that in the parentheses at all. You just put the page number. There are a couple of exceptions. Okay, so say your article doesn't have a title. If your article doesn't have a title, then in the works cited, the very first thing, let me see if I can go up. Yeah, up here. So say this Susan Jones didn't have an author. I said title, I meant author. Say your work doesn't have an author. Like, you can't find the author, it's anonymous. Maybe it's a page on a website and there is no author. For whatever reason, a lot of times it's hard to find who the actual author of something was. You can still cite it. So in your works cited entry, if there's any piece of information missing, you just leave it out. You just leave it out and move on to the next thing in order, according to the citation format that you're following. So if you're missing the author, you leave it out, and the first thing you have is the title. Now, if it's an article, it's in quotation marks, and if it's a book, it's in italics. That's a lesson that I will do probably in class. Talk about the difference between when do you use italics and when do you use quotation marks. So we can do it on the board and have a little bit more interaction with that. But I'll just tell you that whatever the title is supposed to be, and whether it's quotation marks or italics, you put it in that, and then you just move on with the rest of the entry. So say that article for the lifespan we're going to say because that makes more sense, of the typical marsh-dwelling college freshman. Say that was just like it is, no author. So how would we cite that in the text? If there's no author to put the last name, the thing that's supposed to go in the parentheses in the text is the part that sticks out with the hanging indent. So with authored texts, the last name is what that is. For works that don't have an author, you use the first word or maybe a couple of words of the article, what sticks out, basically. Whatever it is, that will be the first word or two that identifies it for the reader with the same principle. If they look at that, they know they can switch to the works cited, scroll down the bits sticking out on the left, and they can find those two words or that word pretty easily. So for the in-text citation for this one, instead of Jones, say this is our quote. Some scholars have noted that blah, 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 blah. So you would put in the parentheses, instead of the last name, you'd put the part that sticks out. And you put it, what does it say? The lifespan? I've already forgotten the made-up article title. What is it called? The lifespan. Yeah, I was right. And you put, if it's an article in quotation marks, you put the citation, the in-text citation part in quotation marks. If it's the book title and it's in italics, then you put it in italics in the in-text citation. Now note, you only do this, you only include the title in the in-text citation if you don't have an author to put their name or their last name. So yeah, if there's a title, a work that doesn't have an author, that's how you do it. Some works have multiple authors. So you might end up with a in-text citation that says, you know, Jones and Smith 12, right? And so you could put them both. You could also, this is allowed, where you can do that as well. If it's 3 or more authors, so you have several authors in the in-text or in the works cited entry, you put all the authors, in a row, and you can look in your manual to see how to format the names for multiple authors in a works cited entry. In the text, if it's 3 or more authors, you can use et al. So you could put Jones et al. There's a period after that, and then 12. So et al. Means and following, or and all the others, right? So that's what it's Latin for Jones et al. So Jones and all of them. It's basically Jones and all of them. I'm not listing them all. Y'all can figure it out. But in the in-text citation, if you put Jones as whatever the first name in the entry is, the first author in the works cited entry, you put their last name, and then that's enough for the reader to find the entry in the works cited. So again, these in-text citations with the parentheses, their only purpose is just to have the minimum amount of information so that the reader can then flip to the works cited and scan down the list and find the full entry, the full information about the source. You don't put a whole bunch of extra information in the in-text citations. So for APA, I will show you a little bit. So if you want to, I'll talk about the APA references page in just a second, but the in-text citations for APA are a little bit different. So they have the last name, comma, they got the year, I think that's the year I put for Jones, it doesn't matter, comma, and then PG period, not capital, PG period, and the page number. The period still goes on the outside. So that is the works cited for APA. So it would be the same. So up here, if you mention them in the sentence, according to Jones, you'd put the parentheses right there, 2018, and then you'd have the quote, and then you'd have PG period in front of the page number. That's APA. So APA is a little bit more complicated with the in-text citations than MLA is. But again, all of that information, I would say it's in your book, but APA has updated itself since your manual came out. But I don't think they changed the in-text citations. They changed the title page, which I showed you, and I think they might have added a few types of sources to the the references page, the kinds of sources that they have. I think they might have made a few changes in the references list, but I think the in-text citations haven't changed, so that would still be the same. But a resource that you can use for APA especially if, since your book is now out of date with APA, you can use this, the online writing lab at Purdue University. I pulled this up before in the last screencast when we were talking about formatting your title page. But if you go to the online writing lab, it's owl.purdue.edu. You can see that up here, OWL, onlinewritinglab.purdue.edu. It's trying to load. There we go. So I was just going to show you maybe. It is loading, you just can't see it. It says not responding. There we go. So if we kind of go down, if you go to over here to research and citation, and you can go to APA, that 7th edition is the most recent. It's the one they updated in the fall of 2019. October, I think, to be specific. Oh, there's an ad. We don't want that. Here we go. APA Formatting and Style Guide. So you can look at the in-text citations. You can look at the general format. And then you go down to the reference list, and it has basic, and then you can look at any kind of source. Articles and periodicals, like those are journals. Books, other kind of all different kinds of sources, you can look at them individually. And if you go over here on the right, it'll populate, yeah, there we go, October 2019. And so it'll show you here some key differences that APA has in the works cited, or the references, is that instead of first names or they only have the author's last name and then use initials for the first and middle name. That is a feature of APA. They also have the year in parentheses right after the author. MLA doesn't do that. They do not have quotation marks around article titles. Their titles of articles and books are in sentence case, meaning that the first word is capitalized, but all the others aren't, unless it's a proper noun, like someone's name, or the name of an organization, or the title of a different book, or something that's listed in the article. And so you'll see here that they don't have VOL period in front of the volume. They don't have comma NO period in front of the issue number. They do it like this. The volume number is in italics. Then the issue number is in parentheses right beside it. And then they have the page range. They don't have PP period in front of the page range. So this is just a journal article style, just to show you. But if you, in the future, you don't have to use APA for me. But if at some point you have to do a paper with APA and you don't have your manual that is up to date, then you can go on this owl.purdue.edu and go to the APA section in references and for formatting, and look at any kind of type of source. You can look up books and it'll show you the format for books. You can kind of see that. Let's see. Author, year, the title of the work is in italics, but it's in a sentence case, so only the first letter, the first word is capitalized, and then the first word after a colon is capitalized. And then just the publisher, and that's it, like this. And so, yeah, if you need to use APA at some point in the future, this is a good resource until you get your hands on a more updated copy of the APA manual. The Purdue Writing Lab is a great resource. Okay, so I'm going to come back here to the webcam just to say, just kind of a final thought that I know that citing sources and doing all the little fiddly bits and the commas and the parentheses and the spacing and all that is kind of intimidating, and it doesn't seem like there's a rhyme or reason to it, but I promise you that there is, because if a reader or a scholar is looking at a references list or a works cited page and they are familiar with a couple different citation styles, formatting styles, then even if there's a language barrier and they're not really familiar with English or whatever language the text is written in, because of the spacing of the elements in the citation, and some of them in parentheses and some of them, the numbers in a particular order. Volume number goes here, then comma, then issue number goes here, then comma, then date, then comma, then page range. And then the journal titles in italics, but the article titles in quotation marks, and all that stuff, because it's in certain order, it's very clear. This is the volume number, this is the issue number, this is the date, these are the page numbers, because they are in a particular order with a particular formatting. And so the whole goal of this exercise is clarity. Because, as I have mentioned several times in class and on lectures, that the point of academic research and the point of academic writing is to jump into a conversation that's already happening and build off of what's already been done and contribute your own voice. And so part of your responsibility for contributing to that conversation is providing clear pathways to find and track down the research that you used. And having correct MLA formatting or APA formatting you're obligated to do that, for the ease of your reader. It also covers you for plagiarism and intellectual property and things like that. You must give credit where credit is due, and you must make it very clear which sources you consulted, what exactly it is you got from them, where in that source you found it. We are very strict in the university community about giving credit for intellectual property and citing things appropriately so that we are not inadvertently stealing someone else's ideas. So those are a couple of reasons why learning this format and learning how to follow it and taking it seriously, those are a couple of reasons why that's necessary. Again, we will talk more about this as you are working on your other projects in class and as you're working on your annotated bibs, your next couple of essays. We will double check these and we can make sure that you're doing them correctly. And that, I won't let you fall to the wayside. We'll make sure that you're not intimidated by this process anymore. But I think that that's all I've got about the Works Cited and how to format it and everything for now. So good luck with this. It's here so you can go back and watch parts of it again if you need a reminder of how to do something. And you can always ask me if you have questions. But otherwise, I hope you guys are having a good week, and I will talk to you later. Bye.